Hello and welcome back to another episode of TechteamGB. Today we're going to be checking out the Motorola Moto 360. It's one of the most interesting gadgets of 2014, but is it worth your money? Let's find out. Alright guys, so first things first, I just want to talk about the strap that I've got on the 360. You can see it's a metal one. It's one that you'd get on something like a Pebble. It's not the actual genuine one, it's one I found on Amazon. It was around about £13. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the standard leather one that comes on the watch. It's just that I much prefer metal straps, so I picked that up. Really easy to change. It uses 22mm spring bar tools to get it off, so it's exactly the same as changing a normal watch strap, but that's why I've got that on there. Right, so you can see on the left hand side of the device there's a small little pinhole which is where the microphone in this device is located. This is used for things such as your OK Google commands, for sending text messages or setting reminders or starting an alarm or anything like that, so that's where the microphone is located. So as you can see on the right hand side of the device there's a small little button similar to what you'd get on an actual watch, although it's a button and it doesn't turn. It's got this gold crown around it which is kind of a bit odd. I'd much prefer if they made it black. The button itself is actually just used for putting the device into standby and switching it on, but if you hold it down it can also be used to access settings. Actually quite a lot going on the back of the device as well. There's some writing running around the edge which pretty much just tells you that it's IP67 rating, which allows you to submerge the device in up to a metre of water for around about 30 minutes. So nothing crazy, but if you accidentally say jump in the pool with this device on, you know, it can take that. There's also a little sensor there which is used for picking up things like your heart rate, which is great, so you can keep track of how high your heart rate spikes. So as I talked about earlier, I'm currently using the metal strap on the device, but the one that comes with it is a Horbean leather strap, and that's really nice as well. It comes straight from Chicago, so you know it's not going to be any kind of piece of Chinese crap. It's actually really decent quality. The buckles that they use on it are stainless steel, they look really nice, and it gives the device a very premium look, and it's definitely better than any of the sort of silicone or, you know, the cheap fitness bands that you get on a lot of other smartwatches, so I applaud them for actually putting a decent strap on this device. Now one of the most interesting features of the device is the display. It's round and that's how it gets the name Moto 360. Well, it's pretty much round, apart from the small cutout down the bottom, which most people are referring to as the flat tyre. It's used to house the display driver and light sensor. Without it, the display would have to have a much larger bezel, so I'm glad they implemented it in this way. The screen itself is 320 by 290, which certainly isn't the highest resolution, but it's good enough for a watch. The screen itself uses Gorilla Glass 3 technology, which should limit scratches and breakages. It also sits raised above the rest of the device, which gives it a look almost like it's floating. Subtle, but it adds a nice effect. Now under the hood of the device is a few things. You've got the battery, which is 320/300 mAh, depending on which source you decide to believe. The processor it uses is a TI OMAT 3, which is really freaking old. It's about 3 or 4 years old. Odd why they chose this, perhaps there's a reason, I'm not sure, although it'd make much more sense if they chose something like a Snapdragon 400, which most of the other smartwatches are deciding to use, as it's much more power efficient and more powerful in general. So now we're going to take a look at software. This really is what makes and breaks the device. To get the display to come on, all you have to do is flick the watch around. It'll use the proximity sensor to work out when you've done that, and then obviously turn on the display, although sometimes I found that this didn't work, and it's not exactly the most comfortable way of doing it, is having to lift the watch all the way up to your face just to look at it. You can also press the screen and it will turn on that way, and you can also use the button on the side to, you know, look at the screen. Now pulling down from the top of the screen allows you to access a couple of things, your battery level, the date, and also the silence mode. If you pull all the way down, the little line goes through the bell symbol and that activates silence mode. It also gives you a little bit of haptic feedback to let you know you're in that mode, and you also see there's a little bell on the clock face so you know when you're in it. So one of the most important things about a watch is the watch faces itself. You can actually change these by simply pressing and holding on the display. It'll then give you a little menu showing you all the different watch faces installed. I found that some of them weren't exactly the prettiest of watches, but I guess that's sort of subjective. There's a few minimal ones on there that I wasn't too sure about, although some of them aren't too bad. You can see I have a Facer app installed, which allows you to install your own custom watch faces. Motorola do actually offer a Motorola Connect app, which allows you to change things like the background and the second-hand colour, which is nice. So if you wanted to change just little parts of the clock face, you can do that, although you can't make any real dramatic changes. Alright, so now you can see we've just received a message from Andrew. To read what it says, all you have to do is press and hold on it and then swipe it up, and it says, awesome, have fun. Now some people have complained that this doesn't actually work with all messaging apps, although I use LG's messaging app and it seems to work just fine. Although if it doesn't work with yours, you should try something like Google Hangouts and it should work just fine. To reply to it, all you have to do is swipe right and it gives you an option to reply. You can see the first time I did this is actually timed out before it actually let me reply, but the second time it seemed to work just fine. Picked it up straight away, and it also gives you a little sort of timer so you can cancel it if it didn't say exactly what you wanted it to. Then you get a little green tick to show that it's sent. So there's two main ways of getting to the Google voice dictation. You can either choose to say OK Google or just tap the screen. Once you're in there, there's loads of different options and things you can say. Next to them there's also ideas of what you could say after the command. There's things like take a note, remind me, show me my steps, show me my heart rate, set a timer, email somebody, show your agenda, navigation, set a timer, start a stopwatch, set an alarm, show alarms, play music, settings, and finally start. To exit the menu, all you have to do is swipe from left to right. Now, one of the main selling points for this watch is its fitness capabilities, such as its heart rate sensor, but this is strange to me since this watch comes with a leather strap, and for anybody that's ever broken a sweat in a leather strap will know it's not a good idea and it pretty much just ruins the strap. Now, it comes with a number of different fitness apps, a Google heart rate monitor and a Motorola one. The Google one works pretty well most of the time. Sometimes it's a bit finicky, sometimes you have to sort of reposition watch, make sure it's tight enough so it's sitting flush on your wrist. Although sometimes I actually found that the heart rates differ on the two different apps, which is strange. You'd imagine that they were both exactly the same. In the Google one, it gives you a few settings to stop the cards from showing on the screen, which I'd like to have off because, to be honest, I couldn't care less what my heart rate was. Unless I think I'm about to die, then perhaps I'd check it. But for most of the time, it really just doesn't interest me what my heart rate is. Obviously if the feature's there and you want it, then great, it works most of the time, although just make sure the watch is positioned correctly on your wrist and it's tightened nicely down, otherwise you might have some intermittent performance. It's nice that they put this feature on there, although I find it kind of useless. And one of the really cool things about this watch isn't the watch itself, it's actually the apps available for it. So I've got this app called Facer, there is a few others like it. You can see I've got a ton of different watch faces in there. Most of them are downloaded from the Facer Reddit page, which I'll link to in the description down below, but there are a few on the app itself that you can download. You can see I actually designed a TechteamGB one, which is pretty cool. To beam it to your watch, you actually have to be selected using the Facer watch face on the watch first, and then all you have to do is click the button and it should send it to the watch face. Sometimes it takes quite a long time depending on the size of the watch face and other variables like that, but most of the time it takes about 10-15 seconds to do. Once it's on there, it's works completely fine, never hiccups or anything like that, but it just opens so many doors being able to actually design your own watch faces and download other designs that other people have created. Freaking awesome, and I would recommend downloading this app if you have a Moto 360. So one of the main reasons I actually bought this watch was for its ability to control music. It just makes life a lot easier because you don't have to take your phone out of the pocket, and it gives you a few basic controls and just makes life a hell of a lot easier. So you can see once I've started playing a song, listening to some Coldplay, just swipe right on that little notification. It allows you to up the volume, down the volume, and even skip the track. Alright guys, and I'm just going to wrap up my final thoughts on the watch itself. I've had it for around about a month now. I had to get it shipped from America because they just seem to be taking forever to release it here in the UK. So at least that's given me a decent amount of time to play around with it. I wish they would just release it at the same time as they do in the US, but I guess that's just one of those things. But at least it's given me a decent amount of time to work out any bugs in the watch itself. So the main one that I noticed was just general lag and irresponsiveness. This could be from anything to opening and closing an app or just scrolling through the Google cards or anything like that. Just sometimes it will just lag and just be irresponsive. The screen just wouldn't do anything when I touched it. Didn't actually have any freezes like some people were reporting, although the device just stopped working properly for about 2 or 3 seconds and then carried on working. This could be just down to either the fact that it's got a really freaking old processor in it, it's about 4 or 5 years old. Why they chose to put that in there, I don't know. Maybe there was a magical reason that Motorola thought that was a good idea. It could also be down to the fact that the software isn't exactly very optimized yet and it hasn't been out for a very long time, so maybe in the future when it gets a few more updates it'll improve it, but at the moment it's not great. It works 90% of the time, but the 10% of the time it doesn't. It's really freaking frustrating, so just take that into mind. Obviously it's quite a new product, so you might want to wait for the second generation to come out, or at least wait a while for it to get a few updates before going ahead with a purchase. Now, battery life is something that I shortly covered. On my experience, I actually had decent battery life for around about 2 days. Now this is also varied if you put the always on screen mode, which is basically the screen never turns off. At the moment it turns off after about 5 seconds of not being used and then turns back on when you sort of do the wrist gestures or touch the screen or anything like that. But if you have the screen on all the time, it's going to drain the battery life really fast and you probably won't get a day out of it. So really every second of screen on time on these watches really matters, so I definitely recommend switching that off if you have the 360. I know it's not quite as great as having an actual watch when you can look at it all the time, but that's kind of a sacrifice of having an actual screen on your wrist rather than an actual clock. So now I'm just going to give my final thoughts on the product. For value for money, I'm going to give it a 3, because I feel like the specifications are kind of lacking. Though the smartwatch actually looks really nice and quite a premium quality product, it does come in, you know, quite high in the sort of ranking of price. So that's why I'm going to give it that score. It, you know, is quite a revolutionary product, obviously with a circular screen. The only other watch like that is the LG G Watch R, and that came out after. So price is okay, not the best, not the worst. For performance, I'm going to give it a 2 because I just found that it was just laggy and irresponsive. I'd probably give it a 1 if the battery life wasn't what it was. It's fairly decent, you know, it's not the biggest battery ever. As long as you have the screen, the always on screen mode off, it should be just fine. So I'm going to give it a 2 performance because the lag just irritates me and it's just irresponsive quite a lot of the time. For functionality, I'm going to give it a 3 because for a clock it actually works really well. There are some nice watch faces, although sometimes voice dictation and things like that just plays up a lot, and OK Google commands don't always register. Maybe it's just my voice, I don't know. It seems to work fine on my phone, but this just, it works, you know, 60% of the time. The other 40% of the time that it doesn't work is just really, really, really irritating. So I'm going to give it a 3 for functionality. For style, I'm actually going to give it a 5 out of 5. I think it looks absolutely amazing, you know, especially with this silver watch strap that I put on there. The leather one actually looks really nice as well, but I definitely prefer this to pretty much any other smartwatch on the market, including the Apple Watch, which is soon to be out at the beginning of 2015. So for style, a 5 because the thing just looks awesome. So overall, for a TechteamGB score, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's not completely terrible. You know, there are a few things that they need to work out though for definite. If you like to be on the cutting edge of technology, then sure, jump ahead and go and buy it. You probably won't be disappointed at all. But if you know you want a product that you know is just going to work perfectly, then I would probably tend to say avoid it. It's not bad. I'm not going to be getting rid of mine or anything like that. It's just there are definitely some problems that they need to work out. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. If you dislike it, hit the dislike button. Make sure you leave us a comment down below for what we can improve on next time. If you fancy picking this up, check out our Amazon affiliate link in the description. We get a small kickback every time you use it. Really helps us continue to produce this awesome content. And make sure you subscribe because then you get notifications every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you all next time.